For those of you who've followed the channel for a while, I appreciate it's been a really long time since I last shared something with you, and like any habit, when you fall out of the rhythm, the routine, it seems harder and harder to get back into. And also that's been compounded with some of the things I've been experiencing in my life recently, some of which I'll share in this video. And I feel like now is the time, given that the spring is almost upon us here in England, now is the time to re-emerge. The last few weeks of my life, according to my mind at least, have been nothing short of hell. I'd love to say that that's the entire truth, but of course, everything that the mind objects to can often be considered, in a deeper sense, to be a growth opportunity. On the face of it, there are loads of situations occurring in life at the moment, in various places, which seem to be incredibly testing, generating enormous amounts of friction. Energizing that story which has been there for so many years, which is, what's the point? What's my value? How am I worth this? What have I done to deserve this? In moments where a mind is screaming some combination of expletives, pointing the finger out at those who have done me wrong, and also pointing the finger inwards and saying, you should know better than this. Aren't you aware enough to stop these things from happening? Aren't you more awake than this, or more enlightened than this, or whatever the story is? And of course, it doesn't matter how far down the path you go, however that path looks to you, there's always a potential for us to get trapped in a prison of our own making. Of course, it feels in the moment like failure. It feels like a backward step. It feels like, well, I should know better than this, so why is this happening to me? It points towards a challenge of that sense of identity, that sense of I, that is John. Something I have done is wrong, and therefore I am not where I thought I was. And moments like that are fine when you seek them, but when they happen without prior warning in the moment, they can feel rather unpleasant. Of course, it's all too easy to look at these things as personal attacks and failings on the part of the systems which are supposed to exist to prevent these things from happening. But that kind of assumes that everyone sees things the same way. It assumes that everyone around me has the perspective that I have. I have been wronged or hurt in some way, and therefore I am just in my feelings. And of course, I can share the story that way, and many people may side with me, but what do I gain from convincing others I'm a victim of wrongdoing? What changes? How do I learn from that? How do I experience some kind of growth as a result of that? And I have to say, that doesn't mean any of us should be tolerant of rudeness or hardship. It doesn't mean any of us should accept that when people do things that aren't appropriate, that's okay. But it means drawing a distinction between the thing that's happened out there and the experience that we're having of it. I can't control the things that are happening out there, but I can, to some degree, shine the light of awareness on the experience I'm having. And I can look at those as opportunities for growth. From a very young age, I experienced a lot of conflict in my life, particularly in family life. It was just a thing that happened, whether it was some kind of disagreement or argument or wrongdoing, punishment. I remember those things from very early age. I remember hiding from the arguments. I remember trying to run away from it because I thought, well, I don't like this. This doesn't feel good. But at the same time, that was my point of reference. That was normal. And that was present in my life for certainly as far back as I can remember. So my system's kind of become accustomed to that. It's become trained to being in that fight or flight response. Like that's normal, to be expected. And I've become somewhat tolerant of it. Peace, on the other hand, feels like, well, the word I wrote down when I was reflecting on this was torture. I don't think torture is quite the right word. It's quite a strong word. But it does feel extremely uncomfortable because when you're used to operating at this level of stimulation, then anything lower than that is like, well, there's something wrong here. But at the same time, anything higher than that, like when there's absolute chaos, that again is just too much. But when you're used to living with friction and a particular level of stimulus, then rest tends to be this thing that's like, yeah, it sounds like a nice idea, but the idea of not being in conflict or the feeling of not being in conflict or irritated to some degree is unfamiliar. So for most of my life, rest has been this thing that's enforced, normally through something like a migraine or digestive issues, occasionally burnout. And that's the pattern. And for many of us, we're told this kind of thing is normal. Like we just have to learn to adjust to it. It's a symptom of modern living, or it's a symptom that's arisen without any particular cause or reason. And I think deep down we all know that that's not true. We know that there's a different way. We know that there's a way which exists that is more sustainable for us in the long term, that feels nicer. The question is, what does that look like? What does it feel like? And how do we find it? And we also don't realize how much the expectations, the unconscious expectations we have, shape our choices. And what I mean by that is, if conflict is familiar, if conflict is just something we're used to, like the feeling of conflict, I mean, not necessarily the external form of it, then, as it has been for me, then it tends to be something that we would expect to experience in our working lives, in our relationships, when we're driving along, when we're trying to do our shopping, buying things. Like friction is a part of the experience. And for many of you, you might go, yeah, that's normal, like everyone has that. But do they? Or is it just the majority of people that you seem to be surrounded by? Like, is it an absolute truth, or is it just a commonly accepted belief? So it influences the kinds of things that we expect, and also the kinds of things that we gravitate towards. Like, look at how much conflict is in the programming on the television and some of the music that people listen to, and the way that the news portrays certain events happening across the world. And when you've got so much of that going on, where is the space? Where is the opportunity for peace or for slowing down or for rest? Not only does it seem boring for a lot of people, but it's like, oh, this is too slow. There's something wrong here. I've been driving at 70 miles an hour on the motorway, and now all of a sudden I'm driving at 30 miles an hour, and this is painful. And that's how the nervous system feels when we try to slow down really quickly. It feels unpleasant, and so it stimulates generates something. Oh, we need to go and buy this, or there's a problem over here that needs to be fixed. There's always something to do which keeps us moving at that familiar feeling. It occurred to me last week, whilst I was seeking some understanding of my own situation, that I continue to experience so much friction in my life. Because I continue to seek it. I'm not seeking it consciously. It's just something that seems to be taking shape in the physical world, because I am still holding those unconscious expectations of bad things happening and imagining undesirable outcomes and trying to take steps from stopping them from happening. But really, by taking steps to stop them from happening, I'm expecting them to happen. The difference being this time is that it just occurred to me, I've been here before, not just once or twice, but like, this is a pattern of my life. I've been here so many times. Like, something changes, goes well for a little while, and then some conflict arises, and then it changes, and then the conflict comes back. And I thought, well, that's interesting, because I've spent an enormous amount of time consciously creating various things in my life, but it seems even still, in spite of that, there's like more layers to it. Any of you out there who have done some degree of work on yourselves will appreciate that you see something, it stops being an issue, and then you see something else, and then that stops being an issue, and then you see something else. Like, it's been referred to as the layers of the onion. You know, you peel one layer and then there's another layer, and you peel one layer and there's another layer, and it's like all of these things that we've adopted as beliefs about ourselves and the world around us. The good thing is, though, is that when you start to see the pattern, you start to break the pattern. It occurred to me again when I was reflecting on this that Einstein is reported as having said that the imagination is the preview of life's coming attractions. So if you or I are imagining those scenes of conflict or pain or suffering, then that, to a large extent, is the kind of life that we're expecting, looking for, creating. The best we can hope for is a better way of coping. Rather than actually understanding it, we're just looking for ways to numb the pain, often unhealthy. And there's no end to the number of distractions we are able to find in today's world. Now, the resolution, of course, is a change of thought. It's a change of imagination. If that seems really simple, and it's often easier said than done. And I'm also not going to suggest that that's the place to start. It's not the place I'm going to start or have started. To start with, the opportunity is to listen, to observe, to notice, to be mindful. What's the fear? What's the outcome I fear? What am I convinced will happen? What are you convinced will happen? What seems to carry with it the promise of inevitability? Because that's the thing. So these ideas that we have, these outcomes, they don't seem like, yeah, this could happen. It's more of a sense of certainty. And this is going to happen, and there is nothing I can do about it. And when you feel that way, it's very easy to feel like you are a victim of life. You have no control or influence or steering, a sense of guidance. And the reason it's a good place to start with is because it helps us to know what we're currently working with. If I'm fearing friction with my colleague or my partner, someone in the street I've never met before, who just happens to take a dislike to the way I look or speak or move, then That's the pattern. And every time I shine the light on it, I can see that pattern more and more. It's the program of the mind that's already installed, if you like. At the beginning, if this isn't something that's familiar to you, then it can be uncomfortable. It can sometimes help to write these things down, but also it can help to have someone who is impartial, who isn't going to judge you for speaking what you feel in that moment is your truth, who isn't going to criticize you or tell you that you're wrong or try and convince you that you need to cope with it or change it, but simply just to help you see that it's there. And like many of you out there, I haven't had that person for much of my life. So I've had to become that for myself. A part of the reason for me sharing these videos is because I acknowledge that some of you out there aren't inclined or aren't in a position to be able to seek that kind of support. And so the medium of watching a video anonymously is quite convenient in that regard. The support's always available to people who are asking for it, seeking it, and open to it. But it doesn't have to look one way. It doesn't have to look like getting therapy or reading a book or journaling or speaking out your thoughts. Like, some of those things work for some people, some of them don't. Whatever helps is what illuminates what's inside of you and helps you to see it more clearly. Sometimes you have to try a few things. And it's okay to get it wrong as well. Well, for me, noticing the voice of conflict, the scenes of pain and some variation on a theme of me trying something and it not working, whilst it's something I've seen before in so many ways, it still represents an enormous step, because it's that moment where you start to go, so that's why all this stuff is happening. That's why I feel the way that I feel. It's the understanding. Like, that's the bit that's really important. Even if nothing on the outside changes, it's really helpful to notice the pattern that's so easy to slip into, especially in moments when you may not necessarily be quite as aware or resourceful as you normally are. And the reason I see this as a growth opportunity for me is, one, it helps break the pattern. It helps me see the part that I'm playing inadvertently in this drama. And when you see things at that level, you can't ever fully unsee them. You can lose sight of them, of course. Like, I can look up and I can see the sun, and I can look away and I can become so fixated on something over here that I forget the sun exists, but it's still there. I'll come back to it eventually. And losing your way like this isn't a sign of failure. It's not a sign of doing it wrong or not being there yet. It's just the system repeating itself so that you can see this happening at deeper and deeper levels. From here, it might not be that everything in your life changes overnight. It might not be the case that everything suddenly appears to make sense, although of course it may, and that would be great. If that happens to you, that's amazing. It's not always the case. But what's really helpful to know is that when those pictures appear in there, they're suggestions. They're not guarantees. It's like someone saying, would you like to have Indian food tonight, or a burger, or pizza? These are suggestions. They're not mandates. And we get those two things confused. And where we suffer is where the contents of our mind are treated as if they're absolute, as if the thing that we imagine is absolutely destined to happen, and there's nothing we can do about it. as I've mentioned, I'm no different. I get lost in that too. We all want change of some form to happen instantaneously. All of us want to get the maximum result with the minimum amount of effort. And in many cases in life, there is a possibility to do more of that by finding those points of leverage. It's no different here. Finding the leverage point is just identifying the thought that seems to carry with it the sense of inevitability. Identifying that and going, that's the one I get lost. But the process of identifying, the process of insight and understanding brings with it the sense of gratitude that also comes with self-discovery. And without that, the insight alone is meaningless. I can tell you you're suffering the things that you think because you believe they're true and they're not. But 99% of you are going to hear that and go, so what? You have to discover it for yourself. And we're going to lose sight of it. And it will come back to us. And we'll lose sight of it again and it will come back to us. But every time it comes back to us with a bit more clarity. Whether anything changes immediately on the outside is less of a concern because your experience becomes more stable. And maybe you start to see the situation with a bit more clarity and you go, do you know what? That's not okay. I don't have to tolerate that. I don't have to put up with that. That's not appropriate. And you take steps accordingly. But the steps are taken without the sense of urgency that so often drives us to do things out of desperation that we later regret because they move us into exactly the same situation, just in a different form. The emotional charge is the bit that we really are seeking to resolve, and that's the bit that's within our control. It's the bit that we can tend to, like the child who is crying out in pain. And there's so much out there said about the inner child. The inner child, you can change the wording and just call it the inner voice. If the inner voice is hurting, then no amount of external consolation is going to make a difference. Listening to that voice without trying to change it, allowing it to be there, accepting that it is there, not from the place of this is me and this is all I'm good for, but from the place of this is what's occurring inside of me in this moment. And it is not reflective of absolute truth. This is simply just the weather, the internal weather. And by listening to it and allowing it to be there, it loses its sting, loses its pain. When it does that, space opens up, and in that space we can plant something more constructive, seeds of love or kindness or understanding towards ourselves and towards others. In that space, we also have the opportunity to ask the question of ourselves, what do I want? And so much of what we think we want is governed by looking at the opposite of what we have. I want something other than this crappy situation I find myself in. So I need to change my job, or I need to change my partner, or I need to change my car, some variation on a theme. But when the emotional tension subsides, those things become less urgent. And it may be the case that when we pause for a moment and we reflect and we listen to what's in our hearts, what's in the deeper wisdom inside of us, it's like, actually everything's kind of okay. I just need a bit more space for myself. Or, do you know what? It's time for me to change my job, and actually maybe I'm in the wrong line of work. Or, yes, this relationship is not the best relationship for me. And I can leave it with a clear conscience. The purpose of me sharing these things isn't necessarily because I think I have all of the answers. Hopefully by now, if you've been watching the whole video, you'll have realized I definitely don't. I simply just want to share the experience and the realization, because there are so many of us out there who take our thoughts to be true, and who go to great lengths to avoid that voice inside. And some of those lengths can be very drastic, even at the cost of our lives, unfortunately. And I'd like to prevent that. I'd like to do my part to help some of you out there understand yourselves, as I myself am continuing to do, to restore your ability to choose. Not just choose the options that the media presents, or that the doctors present, or that your friends present, but to choose the options that your heart is presenting. And perhaps along the way extend some of that choice and kindness and understanding towards the people around you, because goodness knows, we could do with some of that in the world right now. It certainly seems as if everything is overwhelmingly negative, and of course that's not the case. Yes, there is always the possibility of things going wrong, but there is equally the possibility of things going right. There is the possibility of people saying kind things to you as well as unkind things. If you have the capacity to imagine bad things happening, then equally you have the capacity to imagine good things. If this aligns with your desire to expand your life and understand yourself in the process, then I'd love to see you again. Hopefully there's some value in here, and if there is, please let me know. I'd love to hear from you.